So in today's video, I interviewed two professional whole animal butchers to ask them what their favorite cuts of meat are that most people don't know about. So all the common cuts that you're aware of, like filet and ribeyes and short ribs and pork chops, they're all out, and these 8 magical cuts are now in. And I'll be cooking up all these cuts, rating them on their difficulty level, and then Carly and I will sample them and rate them on overall tastiness. So hopefully by the end of this video, you'll have a few unique cuts that you can try and have in your arsenal. First up, we have the tri-tip, which is a triangular piece of beef that comes from the bottom sirloin on the back legs of the cow. Now, they can be a little difficult to grill due to the unevenness that you see right here. So a butcher will cut them into even pieces, which then makes Newport steaks. And that's actually what I will be cooking up today. Now, for every steak that I am demoing, I'll season them up with salt and pepper, and I'll let those sit in the fridge overnight to dry brine. And for the grilling, I am turning to the Argentinians who know their steak probably best. This is an Argentinian style grill, which has one side where you build up the fire. And when that burns down, the charcoal falls through the grapes, which then gets swept over to the barbecue grates, which then can be controlled up and down for the perfect sear. This to me is by far the most optimal way to cook a steak. So all of the steaks will be cooked on this grill, and then other items that need some smoking will go in the smoker. And since this Newport steak is a fairly tender cut, I'm just gonna sear it hard and make sure to cut it against the grain. So Newport, first taste. If you can't afford a full tri-tip or you don't want to cook a full tri-tip, it looked like this was from the tip of the tri-tip.
That's exactly how I like steak.
I would say difficulty-wise, really easy to cook. Nothing abnormal outside of like just cooking regular steak.
Yeah.
You know, there's some good fat in there.
It's a little tough.
Little tough,
Yeah.
slightly chewy.
That's kind of what I like in a steak, so.
You're gonna get more flavor when you have a little bit more of that toughness too.
But like the rare parts are super tender.
Yeah.
It just has that fat line in the center.
Tastes like a New York strip, I would
totally,
say.
100%.
Because it's not fatty like a ribeye. I'll give it an 8 out of 10.
For me, it's a 9.
I love it. You like the flavor.
I like the flavor.
I think I could use a little more tenderness, but
Yeah.
I like it.
Next up, we have country style ribs, which can actually mean different things depending on the butcher. The general idea is taking a larger muscle from the pig and cutting them down into rib-like pieces. So there's no actual rib bones in there, but the idea is you get a nice meaty rib-like texture when cooked right. Now, these specific country ribs are cut from the shoulder of the pig, but you'll also see them a lot cut from the loin with a little bit of belly attached. And I'm just gonna simply season these with salt and pepper, and since every pork rib that I make goes straight to the smoker, I'm gonna do the same exact thing. I'll smoke them low and slow at 250 degrees, and they really just needed about 2.5 to 3 hours to smoke, which is a very similar process to smoking, say, regular rib or spare rib. All right, country style ribs.
I really like the layer of fat on the top though.
Yeah. Oh, I do
It's
have
not-
barbecue sauce.
Oh, you did? You made?
Yeah. Take this.
It's not like tough the way fat gets on ribs. That's delicious.
Yeah, they're like little nuggets. I would say difficulty, super easy. 4 out of 10. Taste.
I would say like 7 or 8 out of 10.
That's how I feel.
Yeah.
I will give it a 7 out of 10.
I feel like they could be a little saltier.
Saltier? Well, you can just dip it in your
barbecue.
salty barbecue.
Yeah.
But delicious though.
All right, we are moving on to the chuck eye, which comes from the shoulder of the cow. Now, the name sounds like a ribeye, and of course it looks like a ribeye. And that's because ribeyes are cut from the 6th to the 12th ribs of the cow, and the chuck eye is cut from the 5th. So it's just one cut away from being a ribeye, and they have a lot of similar characteristics. One of the main benefits of this cut over the ribeye is that it has a larger spinalis, which is the cap of the ribeye. But in return, you have a smaller eye. So it's really just preference. The saying is that the ribeye is the king of the cow and the chuck eye is the prince. And a rare prince at that, because there's only 2 of these per cow. So if you see one in the butcher, snatch it up and try it at home. This was tied up by the butcher, so it was super easy to just season up. And of course, like any ribeye steak, I'm going for a hard sear and a nice medium rare interior. So we've got the chuck eye here. Have you ever had one of these?
Nope, never.
I'm sure you've had plenty of ribeyes.
Plenty of ribeyes.
My dad's favorite steak is ribeye, so he would probably be mad that I undercooked this slightly, I would say. But you can still find, you know, medium rare piece. Difficulty cooks just like a ribeye, and ribeyes are pretty easy because they have so much fat.
Yeah. Take this piece. So tender.
So tender. That's why ribeyes are so sought after. But if you see chuck eye, I mean, that's just as good.
Yeah. It's so tender.
Yeah, like it is just pulling apart like no problem.
I think that's delicious.
Rating.
I'm gonna say 9 out of 10.
9?
That's really good.
I would say 8.5, just because I've had so much of that in my life that it's not like blowing me away.
Yeah.
Like if I never had a ribeye in my life, I'd be like, what the hell is that?
In terms of a cut of meat I've never heard of, 9 out of 10. Delicious, tender.
All right, look at this beast right here. This is a whole bavette. And I will say, this is not new to me. Over the last year or two, this has become my absolute favorite cut of meat. But somehow before that, I was totally unaware of how good this cut is. So this cut comes from the hind side of the cow and sits right underneath the flank steak. And you can see those similar flank steak properties with those long muscle fibers. Now, what's so incredible about this steak is that it has the same tenderness as a skirt steak, but it's about 4 times as thick as a skirt steak. So it cooks up like a true steak, which is exactly what I'm gonna do with it. The goal here is really just giving it a nice sear. Of course, it's a little bit uneven, so you gotta watch out for that on the grill. And with these super long muscle fibers, it is extra important to cut it against the grain for maximum tenderness.
So this one I had to throw on the list, even though I would say over the last year, it's become my favorite steak.
I've worked with Bavette a lot in restaurants, and it's probably the only steak if I see on a menu that I'll order in a restaurant.
Interesting.
They're just perfect for like steak frites.
And
steak and a vegetable.
A lot of you have probably had something like this, but don't even know. Like, you wouldn't order it.
I think it's a very popular restaurant cut.
Oh, difficulty. It's not too bad. It does a whole bavette since there's different sizes.
Right, that's true.
Like there's enough fat in there that I'll say 6. It's pretty easy.
I also never mind having a variety of cooks within one steak.
It's so tender. Look at this. For a steak to just pull apart like that. It's a thicker skirt steak. It is unbelievable. I don't know how this wasn't more popular in the US for so long.
It has like such a savory flavor.
Very savory.
Super meaty, not sweet at all.
Yeah.
It's a little dry, I think.
Drier than others. Yes. But that's why you throw it on a taco with some salsa or whatever. Or like a gravy.
A chimichurri.
Chimichurri.
It's a good steak for like getting soaked in a sauce afterwards.
I agree.
It has all the crevices that can like pick up the sauce.
9 out of 10 for me.
I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10.
Okay.
I think I've had other bavettes that like blow me away.
My bavette is just not
That's
taking
not
me
what
there.
I mean.
It is just
Also, I
straight
think
up,
maybe because my eating bavettes is like when I'm cooking it in a restaurant and I'm getting this piece.
Yeah.
This is my favorite piece.
The end little crevasse.
So like that
That's a 9 for
was
me.
like a 9 out of 10.
Now, this video would not be possible without the incredible products coming from today's sponsor, Porter Road. And actually, one of the butchers I interviewed for this video to get that insider information was James, the co-founder and original butcher at Porter Road. And I've worked with Porter Road for years. I've personally been ordering their meat for many years. But if you're not familiar with them, they're an online butcher shop that works with trusted local farmers to get the highest quality meat that is raised on pastures without any antibiotics or added hormones. And normally this type of high quality meat paired with just top-notch butchering skills was only available at local high-end butcher shops. But Porter Road gives you the ability to get that same type of product delivered to your front door. And most importantly, the taste and quality is just incredible. When I lived in the city, I had more options for local butcher shops, but now that I've moved to Long Island, the options are much more slim. So Porter Road for me and my family is a go-to. And if you're interested in trying out Porter Road yourself, check out the link below for 15% off your first order. Next up, we have beef belly, which yes, comes from the belly of the cow. Now at this point, everyone of course is familiar with pork belly, which is where bacon comes from. You see a lot of delicious Asian dishes made with pork belly, but beef belly is something that most people probably have never had before, and I absolutely love it, specifically to make bacon out of. And that's what I'm gonna be doing with this beef belly. belly. I'm gonna make a wet brine around 10% salt levels. And I was looking up natural ways to add nitrites in to help with the preservation instead of using this pink curing salt. And I actually saw that celery is super high in nitrates, which is pretty abundant in the garden right now. So I juiced some celery and poured that in, and I'm gonna add some bay leaf from the garden, some black peppercorns, popped in the beef belly, and let that sit in the brine for around 5 to 6 days. And I will say, after a week, when I opened this bin, it smelled so fresh, kind of like a fresh juice. So I feel like the nitrates in the celery did their job. This baby gets dried off. I hit it with more pepper just to give it that outer crust. And I'm gonna throw it in the smoker at 200 degrees until it reaches an internal temperature around 135 degrees Fahrenheit, which is enough to cook the belly through, but not high enough to render out the fat, because of course we're making bacon and we want that fat. So I let this cool in the fridge overnight, then it was on to the deli slicer.
All right, beef bacon. Your first time
My
trying?
first beef bacon.
I will say, before you try it, this makes the best base for anything. I've made it before. I just made pasta last night with it. It's such a good base, what would you call it? Cured thing to fry up. On its own, let's see. So difficulty, I would say, if you've never made bacon, 8 out of 10.
I'm so confused.
It's confusing.
It's confusing.
Oh
It's
my God.
delicious. It's so sweet.
Oh my God. That's the best batch I've ever made by far. It tastes like it tastes like if bacon and a steak had a baby, because you taste that.
It tastes like a bacon cheeseburger.
Yeah, that's so true. Oh my God. That's the best point. That's why people love bacon cheeseburgers.
Yeah.
It's the beef and the pork together.
It's really tasty.
Wow. I'm going 9.5.
I want to say 9.5 also.
Yes.
It's so good.
Love that.
Yeah.
And it's just great because you make a huge thing of it. You freeze a few packs.
This would be so ridiculous on an egg sandwich.
Yeah. Pork is out for bacon.
Bacon cheeseburgers are in.
All right, next up we have the Picanha Steak, which is a cut from the rump or the butt of the cow that's connected to the top sirloin. Now, sometimes you can find a full picanha roast, but what I have here is just a single steak. And this is the cut you see on every single Brazilian steakhouse billboard. Now, if the fat cap is super thick, it can be scored to help render it out a bit. But in my case, it wasn't too bad, so I just seasoned it up and really just cooked it like any other steak, just making sure to give that fat cap a little extra time to render on the grill.
All right, so this is the old Brazilian steakhouse cut, the Picanha Steak. So you can get whole picanha, but this is a great option if you just want a steak. I would say difficulty-wise, you can see that it's tougher. You know, it's tougher, so it doesn't cook up like a normal ribeye or strip. Like, it's got a firmness on the grill.
It's tough, but it has a really nice flavor.
Totally pungent, unique, beefy flavor.
Definitely.
And I think in the grill house, they constantly have that outer part of the steak sort of searing on the fire.
And then they shave it off.
And I feel like this
That's
maybe
interesting.
is not the best for cooking just like a steak, medium rare.
Yeah, I would agree. I feel like it's so flavorful. There's gotta be a better way, like maybe like a smoking it or like slow cooking it on the grill.
Yeah, you probably need to work on those muscle fibers a little bit longer.
Or even like using it as like a taco meat.
Yeah.
Because the flavor, like it's such good grilled meat flavor.
It was sold as a steak though, so I will say Picanha Steak, 6 out of 10 for me. Insane flavor.
I would say 6 because the flavor is so good, otherwise 5.
All right.
Yeah, 6.
Comment in below if you've got a better technique for cooking Picanha Steak.
Next up, we have the Denver steak, which comes from the chuck just below the shoulder blade. And while most cuts from the chuck are heavily used muscles, making them tougher, they need a little more slow cooking. The Denver is actually from a muscle that doesn't get used that much, so you can actually sear it up like a steak. But in reality, it's a boneless short rib, which makes it extremely versatile. It can be sous vide, it can be slow cooked, and it can be seared up, which I'm gonna be trying today. I'm gonna season it up, I'm gonna grill it like a normal steak. And I will say, due to its shape, it was a little bit awkward on the grill. I almost had to sear it on every single side to make sure it was cooked through without drying out the exterior.
I'm very impressed right now with my cooking steak skills. I will say though, difficulty 7.5 out of 10. Doesn't cook up like a normal steak would. I've never had a Denver. Super versatile steak, can be slow cooked because it's coming from the shoulder, but apparently can be served up like a steak. So let's see. Whoa, whoa.
Wow.
Not what I was expecting.
Not what I was expecting either.
Flavor is unbelievable, which makes sense that it's that like short ribby, really intense beefiness.
Totally tastes like a short rib.
Yeah, I like that a lot, flavor-wise.
I don't love it.
No, why not?
No, it's like very subtle, like mild, I feel like.
Yeah, it's mild, but I don't know, carries some
It's so light and
deepness.
sweet. I don't know, I think maybe it's the texture that's throwing me off.
Texture is different.
The texture is different.
Yeah.
Definitely different. And I think it's definitely because there's so much of this fat and muscle layering through the meat.
Looks like a tuna steak. Holy shit. Okay, rate it then. Rate it.
Probably like a 6 out of 10.
It's a hard one for me. I feel like it would get a little old after like a few bites.
I agree.
I'll give it a 7 though, just because it's so unique, but that just maybe is because I haven't tried it before. I do need to try the slow cook because I think that's interesting.
Yeah, I would love to.
So versatile.
Try
or
that.
sous vide it. If you like sous vide that for a day and then seared it, I feel like it could be delicious to render some of that out a little bit.
It is also crazy how different each cut that we've been tasting was flavor-wise.
Not just texture.
Not texture, flavor-wise.
Yeah.
Like every single cut that we've had tastes completely different.
Wow.
This is the sweetest, mildest. It's like roast beef.
It's like an acquired sort of.
To me, this is like
That's true.
a roast
In
with
steak
potatoes
form.
in steak form.
Yeah.
And finally, we have something highly recommended from James, which is a pork brisket. I'm guessing most of you have never cooked one of these. This is brand new to me. It includes meat from the lower part of the shoulder and the lower part of the belly. So a lot of times you'll have this nice little fat cap on top from the belly. And since it's a brisket, I figured I've got to smoke it just like I would smoke a beef brisket. So I seasoned it up. I threw it on the smoker low and slow, 250 degrees Fahrenheit, until that internal temp was around 195. And the main difference here is that it's just so much smaller than a beef brisket. So it only took around 3 hours to cook completely through.
I pulled it a little early. I didn't want to overcook it. I would say difficulty-wise, it's easier than a regular brisket. I won't know until I taste it, so I'll give it difficulty after.
Yeah.
It feels a little dry. There's not that much fat going on. Maybe I overcooked it.
Not dry.
No, it's nice. But it's not fatty like a rib.
No.
It's got a really good flavor. The smoke ring is amazing.
Yummy.
Yeah.
Surprising.
Flavor's amazing.
Flavor's amazing, and it's not dry at all.
It tastes more like
Like it tastes like a pork loin to me, and it has the same texture. And
it's lean like a loin.
super lean.
I'll give difficulty 7 out of 10. It's still, you know, it's not as easy as cooking ribs because you don't have that fat. Taste, 8 for me.
I would say it's like an 8 for me.
All right,
Yeah.
we agree.
A solid.
We agree for
solid.
once.
Yeah, solid piece of pork.
Thanks again for watching, and a big shout out to both Butcher John and Butcher James for really inspiring me to try out some new cuts on the grill.